Our wonderful world champions have annihilated Argentina thanks to a stunning Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu masterclass. And in this episode, I'm going to give you my top 5 takeaways from the sensational Springbok performance, starting with number 1, Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu. Now guys, I know that if you have been a regular on my channel, then you know that I have told you that many years ago I actually worked with Sacha's dad when I was working in radio in Cape Town, Nick Feinberg. And Nick actually brought young Sacha to the radio station. I think Sacha was about 4 years old at the time. Very nice little boy. And he's become, I think it's fair to say, a very nice young man. And so in many ways, I feel like a very proud uncle here. Sacha was sublime in this test match against Argentina. I think it's fair to say that those of us who have been paying attention to his career, following him at the Stormers and his very early Springbok career, have identified that there's something special about this kid. No doubt he can do it all, but we've been waiting to see if he can indeed do it all at the highest level. He made his debut last year in the test match against Portugal. In fact, I beg your pardon, that was actually when he started for the first time. He came off the bench against Wales in the Qatar Airways Cup. And there were glimpses in the Rugby Championship against Australia, away from home last year, as well as against the All Blacks on home turf. We saw glimpses of what this kid can do. And I think it's fair to say again that in 2025, we haven't really seen him at his best. I was actually at a Stormers match earlier this year against Connacht at the Cape Town Stadium, where he was wonderful. He scored a hat-trick and he did everything well. But maybe for the Boks in 2025, he hasn't been at his best. I think we'll all agree that against Georgia, that was probably his worst test match so far for his country. But what we saw against Los Pumas in Durban was nothing short of spectacular. So much so that you might want to consider picking Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu in your all-time favorite Springbok dream team. SuperSport is putting together a promotion to celebrate 30 years of professional rugby. We're also celebrating 3 decades of SuperSport. And you can head on over to the link in the description area below. You can also click on the QR code that's on your screen over here, and you can go and select your best Springbok team over the last 30 years. Will Sacha be in that side? Who knows? Will I pick Sacha in my side? Well, we'll have to see at a later stage when we compare notes and see who you picked and who I picked. Again, that link is in the description area below. Your World of Champions, bringing you the best rugby moments from the last 30 years. And if we may elaborate a little bit about what happened in Durban, I just thought his distribution, his passing, his kicking, he's not just goal kicking, but tactical kicking, cross kicking, kicking into space and chasing, as we saw for that second try of his. Damian Willemse making the pass roughly on the halfway line, Sacha kicking it out of hand into space behind Argentina's defense in their 22, and he decided to chase it himself because the boy has some gas. And he beat Kane and Moody to it. I think Moody might have got there before him, but Sacha was kind of saying, this is mine. And he picked it up and went over for a magnificent try. Kicked 10 out of 11. Yes, I know 2 of them hit the post and went in off the inside of the post. Guys, that stuff is going to happen. He hit the post a 3rd time, and that one was on the outside. So he doinked 1 out of his 11 kicks. 10 out of 11, and this is what I'm particularly proud of. 37 points in total on the night. It is a new Springbok record for individual points scored in a single test match. Previously, the record was held by Percy Montgomery, and I think Percy will tell us, and he'll be happy to admit this, that even though you don't really want to lose the record, Monty did it against Namibia on the eve of the 2007 Rugby World Cup. It was a test match played at Newlands. And I think we'll all agree that Sacha doing it against Argentina is a step up from doing it against the Welwitchians. And I say that with all due respect to Percy as well as the Namibians. Don't forget, the Argentines are coming off wins against the All Blacks and the Wallabies. Also, don't forget that Australia and New Zealand suffered defeats to Argentina last year, as did we. These guys are for real, and this 67-30 victory should not, by any stretch of the imagination, mask the fact that they are still a good side. And that brings me to number 2. This was not Wellington 2.0. I think a lot of people were expecting to see more of the same that we saw in New Zealand's capital when we ran riot and put a record score on the All Blacks in their own capital city, 43-10, don't forget. But this was different. I think especially in the first half, the match was considerably more cagey. There was a lot of seesawing. There was a lot of give and take. Argentina were even in front at one stage, just on the brink of halftime. And to be honest with you guys, I looked at it and I thought to myself, you know what? I can't really say that they don't deserve the lead. And then, of course, there was that beautiful Sacha try. So we sort of burgled the advantage just before the break. And then, of course, in the second half, we ran riot. I saw there was one report that gave our boys 10 out of 10 for the performance. I'm going to go 9 out of 10 because I just feel that in the second half, while it is true that we were nothing short of tremendous, in the first half, things were actually quite even. I really thought that had the whistle blown, and we'll talk more about whistle blowing later, had the whistle blown after Argentina took the lead in the first half, I genuinely thought to myself, yeah, I don't think we can really complain here. And don't forget that that try was a penalty try. And we'll talk about that again a little bit later in this episode. So, no, it was not Wellington 2.0. There was a lot more kicking that you saw from us. But I think that that is a positive thing. And I'll tell you why. Yes, we did kick against the All Blacks in Wellington. Kobus Reinach with his box kicks. Marnie, who's very, very good with his up and unders. And his tactical kicking is excellent to boot. Excuse the pun. But I think that what we saw in Wellington, there was a lot more ball in hand play from the Springboks. Whereas against Los Pumas, there was a lot more kicking. And that kind of made sense when you factor in the conditions. And we're going to talk a little bit about the conditions as well, because they were not great in Durban. Nevertheless, this wasn't Wellington 2.0. Let's say that this was more like Durban 1.0, but both of them were very good. And what is scary, if you are a Springbok enemy, is that we have just shown you that we can run with the ball in hand. That's one way we attack. We can attack through tactical kicking, the up and unders, the cross kicks, kicking behind you into space, and creating chaos in your defense while still maintaining the upper hand in many cases. Because don't forget, there's this misperception that kicking equals defense or non-rugby or anti-rugby. No. Kicking is a lethal attacking weapon if you know what you're doing. And you know who knew what they were doing when it came to tactical kicking? The All Blacks in the 2010s. That very same team that many people in World Rugby today revere as the greatest rugby team of all time. So don't dismiss kicking. It was great to see, and what we've shown is that we can run with the ball in hand, we can kick that ball and, more importantly, regain possession, or force you to lose possession in such a way that we gain some territory in any event. We're still big, bad, and bruising up front, and we scored a beautiful maul try from a line-out drive. So it was lovely to see that again. We want to see more of that stuff. But if we can score one try every test match in that fashion, as we did on this occasion with Malcolm Marx, then I'm going to be very, very happy. And that brings us to number 3, the bomb squad. Now, there was a little bit of disruption on the eve of this test match. You might remember that we were going to originally start with Ox and Chair in the loose head position, but on Friday, Ox withdrew due to an injury, so we'll have to see if he's ready for the next test match in London at Twickenham. Don't forget, that's Argentina's home game. It's been moved. And we saw Buan Venter come into the starting 15. I thought Buan did very, very well. All of them did very, very well, to be fair. But Buan did well. And then it was interesting to see that Malcolm Marx was obviously in the hooker position. But his yellow card, which we'll talk about later in this episode, meant that there had to be a little bit of a reshuffling in the pack. Jan-Hendrik Wessels was originally supposed to come on as hooker, but because of the injury to Ox, Wessels moved into the loosehead position. Marco van Staden came onto the bomb squad as a hooker replacement. And then obviously we had Wilco Louw, who might actually be our best tight head. I think he is. But right now, it almost looks as if Rassie is comfortable with Wilco not starting, but rather coming on and causing additional damage. And he did some serious damage in those scrums, it has to be said, at Kings Park. But in terms of the effect of the bomb squad, yes, Kwagga came on and did well. And we saw that RG Snyman came on and did well. Wessels did well. Van Staden was effective. I think the biggest impact actually came from our tight head replacement, Wilco Louw. But I am starting to wonder how much of an effect we're getting from the 5-3 split. But then maybe what we should do is, in the old days, we were looking at 6 fresh forwards coming on roughly at the same time and building on the damage that the original 8 had done. And it looks like now maybe what is happening is, yes, they're continuing and they're adding further pain. And I think it was difficult to judge yesterday because by the time all of our new forwards were on, all 5 of them, the damage had largely already been done. So there wasn't really much for them to come on and do other than turn the screw, which is exactly what they did. So we can't complain. But in terms of the backline players, Morne van den Berg came on and he did a magnificent job, it has to be said. I just do owe Morne an apology, and one of my viewers, I don't know if you're watching, if you are, thank you very much, on Friday pointed out that in my on-screen graphic for the preview episode, I actually spelt Morne van den Berg's name incorrectly. So I humbly apologize for that to the van den Berg family as well as to Morne himself. I am a big believer in trying to pronounce people's names properly, especially in a broadcasting environment, and you should spell people's names properly as well, as accurately as you possibly can. And I know that in some cases, like, people use different alphabets, so like, let's say Russian or Chinese, Japanese, and then you trying to transliterate into English, and then that way you get mistakes. But with English and Afrikaans, that's obviously not the case. So I'm really sorry, and I hope that you guys will forgive me. I know now that Morne van den Berg does not have an H at the end of his surname, so I'll make sure that I get it right going forward. Manie Lebok is another man who came on and did a great job. I thought, again, Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, easily the man of the match, probably the easiest decision in the history of selecting the man of the match, with his hat-trick of tries, 10 out of 11 kicks, the tactical kicking, the passing, the running, the meters gained, all those things. But then Manie came on and said, hey, you know what? That kid is good and he's having a great test, but you know what? I can play too. And that's exactly what Manie did with a beautiful try that he scored himself. A little bit of a chip over the top, also gathering and going over. And you know what? I'm going to tell you what, guys, and I think this has always been the big gripe, right, is Manie's goal kicking, which rightfully was criticized in the past. But you know what? In 2025, we haven't had a problem. And I know that he didn't kick at all yesterday, but he kicked against the All Blacks in Wellington, and he did well. Kicked against Australia, and he did well. And there is this feeling that Manie's biggest weakness is his goal kicking, but he appears to have sorted that out. And now we have a situation where we have a dangerous Manie Lebok, we have a dangerous Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, and we all know about Handré Pollard, the Iceman. This is a magnificent situation for the Springboks to be in. Dr. Rassie Erasmus has got 3 fly halves right now who, between the 3 of them, can pretty much do anything on any day. And when was the last time you could say that about South Africa and the number 10 jersey? Let's move on to number 4, the referee and the laws. Now, Angus Gardner, ironically enough, is a man who I actually think is one of the better referees in the world. And if you ask me, he's probably one of those men who's on course right now to referee the 2027 Rugby World Cup final. Him, Ben O'Keefe, Luke Pearce maybe from England, those are the guys that I think are most likely at this stage to be asked to referee the 2027 Rugby World Cup final. Obviously, there's a long way to go, and we'll have to see what happens between now and then. But I thought yesterday, some thought he had a shocker, others thought he had a very bad game, some said he had a weird game. And I'll tell you what, there was a scrum early on where, and I get it, and this is where it's going to come into, he's the referee and obviously he knows the laws better than I do, but it also it becomes a matter of the law interpretation, and this is what I want to talk about a little bit here. There was a scrum early on in the test match where there appeared to be parity and he called for us to use it. Okay, fine, fair enough. But what happened after he asked us to use it, we then gained the upper hand at scrum time and began to push them. And we were pushing quite effectively. We were gaining meters through the scrum. And he blew us up because we did not use it. Now, okay, fine. I accept that the use it call had already gone out. And then you've got to say, well, Kobus Reinach should have used it, right? He didn't use it, so he was rightfully blown up. But I just wonder, isn't there any room at all for a bit of grace? And the reason I ask that is because at the breakdown, there's so much going on. Guys entering from the side, hands in the ruck, offsides, obstruction, all those sorts of things. And you could argue that there's 10 things going on at the same time, and the referee is going to blow one of those things or allow all 10 at the same time. Or, in many cases, he probably can't even see 5 of the 10 things that are going on. And because there is leniency at the breakdown, could there not be leniency at scrum time? Especially as, like, okay, use it, and just before he is about to use it, suddenly there's an advantage gained by one of the 2 packs. So that's something that I wondered about. And okay, fine, I think it's also something that we've seen now in World Rugby in 2025, that scrums, or at least scrum dominance, is something that is not being rewarded. And I think that that's a great shame. However, because scrum penalties are more difficult to come by, you've seen South Africa expand their game plan. And yeah, it's great if we can get a scrum penalty, but it's okay if we don't, because now we've got a backline and a forwards and backlines combination in attack that is just as lethal. So, keep your scrum penalties. So that was one thing. The second one, and this is again just talking about the law, and you can't blame the referee for this. I thought it was very interesting what happened with Malcolm Marx. So Argentina are mauling near our try line. Malcolm unbinds from the maul, and then he comes back in and enters from the side. Obviously, Malcolm knows that you can't do that. And then as it turns out, Malcolm not only comes in from the side, but he also brings the maul down, collapses it, and that's unfortunately a penalty try and an automatic yellow card. And I just wonder, in that situation, is Malcolm looking at that and saying, well, you know what, if I know I'm going to enter from the side here, but I can prevent a try. But if I enter from the side and I collapse the maul, there's the referee or the assistant referee or the TMO are going to pick up on that, and I'm going to be out of here. And they're going to get 7 free points. So what I'm questioning there is the wisdom of the play. And I accept that, in the heat of the moment, players are going to do things, and sometimes they might not even realize the potential repercussions. And speaking of brain fades or even brain farts and repercussions, how about what happened with Cheslin Kolbe and that bizarre Argentine try? I've never seen anything like it. So Cheslin has got the ball in our own dead ball area. He dots it down. Okay, fine, it's a 22 dropout. And he casually drops it to Damian Willemse. And you can see it's the most casual drop goal you've ever seen in your life. So he's clearly, quote unquote, passing to Damian Willemse. The ball, unfortunately for Cheslin, doesn't reach DW. It's actually ricochets off the post to a very surprised but grateful Santiago Chocobares, who trots over the try line. Untouched, unmarked. And I think everything about that indicates that the Springboks were not in any kind of position or mode to defend what happened next. Everybody on that field, except Chocobares, I think, thought, okay, yeah, Cheslin is kicking the ball to Damian, who's going to take the 22 dropout, or the goal line dropout, except Chocobares. And they picked up 7 free points there too. And yes, I'm sure Cheslin Kolbe will never do that ever again, and his teammates would have probably given him, shall we say, a fine or 2 post-match for that action. But there is another example where you say, okay, you know what, by the letter of the law, 100% what Cheslin did made Chocobares' play not only legitimate, but also perfectly legal. That ball was in play. Argentina did nothing wrong. No one was offside. And he helped himself to a try. Good for him. But as I say, from our point of view, a little bit on the sloppy side. And finally, number 5, the conditions. Yeah, this is a bit of a funny one to put in, I think, but if we're honest with each other, we saw a lot of handling errors, and I was wondering, hang on a second, they said that it's not raining in this test match. And then I had a look at the weather report, and indeed there was a little bit of rain about in Durban. We know that there was rain in the week leading up, and I think if you looked very carefully at our jerseys, you could see that they were a darker shade of green, and that's obviously because of the water that was falling from the heavens. Now, it wasn't pouring down like a monsoon, but it was wet, and you could see that with the difficulty a lot of the players were having in terms of handling errors, i.e. knocking the ball on, but there was also a little bit of juggling going on. I think of one moment where Jasper Visser had it, and then he lost it, and then he was able to regather. So little things like that, and that made it difficult, and I just wonder that despite that, and yes, as I say, I know it wasn't a monsoon, but there was a bit of rain about. I wonder if it had been a dry afternoon, a perfectly dry afternoon, what might have happened then? And there's a chance that we might have a dry afternoon at Twickenham next week. Now, let me just also say, on that note, regardless of what the conditions are next week, I do expect Los Pumas to come at us hard next week. They're going to be hurting after this 67-30 annihilation. And they are a team that, as we've seen before, are very, very good, and they're able to mix it and beat the best. One thing that is true of them that I've noticed in the last couple of years is that this week they'll beat New Zealand, they'll beat South Africa, they'll beat Australia. But then next week they get beaten by those same 3 teams in fairly comfortable fashion. And this is the challenge that Coach Felipe Contepomi currently has. How does he fix that? How does he get them to become consistent? Because if they can start beating us, New Zealand, Australia, England, France, Ireland, regularly, but also consistently and consecutively, then they become a team that can win the Rugby World Cup in 2027. But if they're going to beat us this week and lose to us next week, or in this case, beat New Zealand one week, lose to them the next week, etc., then they're not really Rugby World Cup contenders, but instead they are just a team that is dangerous and probably causes 1 or 2 upsets at the Rugby World Cup. So what I can see happening is they might get a quarter-final against the All Blacks and knock them out. But then the next week in the semi-final, they get us or Australia or whatever, and then they just can't match that performance, and then they get beaten quite easily. So that's something that we need to see from them. And that brings an end to my presentation, and I would love to know what your thoughts are. Do you agree that this was one of the best Springbok performances we've ever seen, and that it's quite scary that the ceiling has not yet been reached? Just how much better can this team be? Or do you think that this is about it? We've got our team now. This is the team Rassie needs to stick with going through to 2027, and this is kind of as good as it will get. Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, why not have a look for the link to my Patreon page and sign up as a patron? Why would I want you to do that? Well, guys, I would love to do this full time. I would also love to go to Australia in 2027 and cover the Rugby World Cup for you from down under with daily coverage. But in order to make that happen, I'm going to need your support. If you sign up as a patron, you can win yourself Springbok match tickets and gear. You could also get quarterly Zoom calls with me. You can get me to write an ebook for you on your favorite Springbok rugby player. You could win the new James Small biography. You could also win the new Eben Etzebeth biography that's coming out soon. You can also get discounts on my soon-to-be-launched online merchandise store. It starts from as little as $5 per month. That's US, not Zimbabwean. And any support will be greatly appreciated. If you're not yet ready to support me in that manner, you can also just crock roll the like button, and you can also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And as mentioned earlier, the Springboks are playing Argentina in London, at Twickenham. And if you want to know why exactly that is the case, well, I put together a video for you. It's on your screen over here where I describe exactly the reasons why. And you may remember earlier I spoke to you about the SuperSport Dream Team, where you can pick your team, your best players from the last 30 years. Again, the link is in the description area below. And if you want to see who Victor Matfield chose in his Dream Team, that video is on your screen over here. And I'll speak to you next time.